Hello, and welcome to this briefing webinar on how to submit a successful application for the Natspec Innovation Awards. I'm Emma Goddard, and I'm currently responsible for running the awards programme, and I'm joined today by Ruth Perry, who is the Senior Policy Manager at Natspec. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Emma, and thanks for suggesting we record this together. I'm really looking forward to offering some advice on how members can make a strong submission for the Natspec Innovation Awards. I'll be drawing on 5 years now of experience of being involved in the awards, so hopefully I'll have something useful to share.
I'm sure you will. Anyway, so to kick us off, could you perhaps briefly explain what the Natspec Innovation Awards are all about?
Sure, yes. We're entering our 6th year now, and our overall aim is to celebrate innovative practice in specialist further education. We have a huge amount we're proud of in this sector, but we're not necessarily great at blowing our own trumpets. So this gives colleges an opportunity to do just that. It's also a way for us to shine a light on some of those really distinctive features of specialist FE. Things like the use of assistive technology, the way that interdisciplinary working often underpins practice, the really high levels of expertise that we have in the sector. We're very good, I think, at hearing the learner voice, and we want those outside our sector to know about that, to understand it better. And I guess what we're hoping to achieve is some form of inspiration, really, so that all further education providers who are working with young people with SEND are thinking about pushing the boundaries, trying new things, taking a few risks, and hopefully they'll look at some of the award winners and think, we could do something like that, or actually we are doing some things a little bit like that. Let's push further. Let's really run with it. I think one of the real differences between the Natspec Innovation Awards and other award schemes within education is that we're looking not necessarily for best practice. I often like to say this isn't Crufts. We're not looking for best in show, but we're looking for innovative, exciting new approaches, things that make a real tangible difference to the learners. But they might be quite small scale. It's the innovative, the newness, the exciting aspect that we're interested in. If I take the Employment Award as an example, the innovative routes into employment, that's one that I shortlist on. That award isn't likely to go to the college with the best track record of getting learners into employment, even though we celebrate that in other ways. That's a great thing to be achieving. But the winner of the award is going to be a college that's broken new ground. Maybe they've got an innovative employer partnership in a sector that specialist colleges aren't typically involved in, or maybe they've introduced an exciting self-employment curriculum. They're looking at micro businesses or eBay selling, or maybe they've got local entrepreneurs working to support their young people to think about self-employment. Or maybe they're using virtual reality as a first step to bringing the world of work to young people who are too anxious to learn in the workplace. So that gives you sort of a flavour of what we're looking for that's a little bit different from just excellent practice per se.
Yeah, that's really helpful. You mentioned the word innovative and innovation a lot during that section, and you did touch on what that means, but perhaps we could explore that a little bit more in this context. What does innovation mean, and what sorts of things should colleges be thinking about?
Yeah, that is a really important question. I think people hold different definitions of innovation in their heads. We've tried to spell it out in terms of how we're interpreting it in the context of these awards. You'll find more information about that on the awards website. But we think of innovation as practice that goes beyond what's typically expected in a specialist college. That's quite a high bar in some ways, because specialist colleges are doing things differently from the norm, but as a norm. That is their norm. So things that go beyond what you might expect to see in a specialist college. We often say, if you think that other members would be surprised or inspired by what you're doing, that's a good indicator that what you're doing might be innovative. And most importantly, innovation is not just about doing something new or something interesting, something different. It has to be something that's having a measurable impact on the learners in your college. We've put an innovation checklist on our website that applicants can use. It's a simple sort of yes, no, and the more yeses, I think that's the way around it works, the more yeses you score, the more likely we are to think that your practice is innovative. So would others be surprised by what you're doing? Is there a buzz around what you're doing in the college? These questions will help guide you as to whether the project really is innovative or not. And we definitely recommend you have a think about those questions before you even submit an application. But I do know that it's difficult because everybody's working on their own patch. Although we're good at collaborating within the Natspec network, people don't always know what others are doing. So they don't necessarily know whether others will be excited or not, or whether what they're doing really stands out. I would say, if in doubt, get in touch. You can always drop any of your contacts at Natspec, me, Emma, Claire. Drop us an email and say, we're doing this. Do you know if anyone else does it? Well, we often see practice when we're out and about and think, wow, I've never seen that before. That's really interesting. Or sometimes something pops out of an Ofsted report and you think, I've never seen that before. But we actually see it both ways. So sometimes colleges don't realise that they're actually doing something really special, really different, so they don't submit it.
Yeah.
And then in sort of on the flip side, we sometimes have colleges thinking they're doing something really unique because it's very different from what might happen in a general FE setting, for example, but actually within our own sector, it's relatively common. A couple of submissions this year, colleges actually made reference to their practice being innovative because you wouldn't see it in a mainstream setting, but we need to push beyond that. Is this special stuff even for a specialist college? If I go back to the employment category again, that's because it's the one I feel most familiar with. This year's submissions, we saw quite a few that were focused on using a college or a community cafe as a learning environment. And they were all making really effective use of that setting. But actually, that's quite common in the specialist sector. And maybe there was something innovative about it, but it wasn't actually made clear to us as shortlisters or to the judges. And then, and the other way around, if I think about the curriculum category that I also shortlist on, there was one college referenced just in a single sentence some work on empowering learners with quite complex needs to conduct their own breast check. I thought, wow, if only they'd majored on that aspect. Never come across that before, and what a fantastic thing to be doing, to be giving that agency, that sort of dignity to those young people. What had happened really was it got a bit lost in descriptions of some other very good curriculum practice, but not necessarily quite so stand out. So to be thinking about what is stand out about this, and if in doubt, and you think it would be helpful, refer to somebody at Natspec to see whether we've ever come across it before.
Yeah, absolutely. Get in touch if you have any thoughts and you just want to run them by us. We'll put the awards email address at the end of the webinar, so you'll be able to know where to get in touch. But if you already have contacts, then yeah, get in touch with them too. Just run things by us and we'll be glad to point you in the right direction. So let's move on to thinking about the applications themselves. And as you know, you've mentioned before that you're a shortlister in this process. The applications go through quite a rigorous process of shortlisting. And then once we've shortlisted applications, they are then submitted to an independent panel of judges who are experts in the field. But as a shortlister yourself, you're in a really good position to tell us what a strong standout application is going to look like, what's going to really make the shortlisters and the judges sit up and listen. So could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Sure. at the risk of forgetting one of them, when you start a sentence saying there are four main things.
I'll remind you if you get, don't worry.
I'll tick off the four first and then unpack each of them a little bit. So specificity, clarity and purpose, alignment with the criteria, and then tangible evidence of positive impact. So when a submission has all four of those, it's really off to a flying start. So in terms of specificity, it's important to choose one clear focused project or initiative rather than a broad sweep of general improvements, or your curriculum as a whole, or your overall approach to preparing learners for employment. If you think about that breast check example that I just made, going for depth on the thing that is really special and not breadth where some things are innovative but some things are less so. And don't leave us wanting to know more about the details. Really unpack that particular aspect of provision. So that next one I mentioned was clarity and purpose. So I'd say be really clear in your explanation of what makes your approach different from the norm and why that project was needed in the first place. What sort of problem were you trying to solve? What new thing were you trying to introduce? Why was it important to do that? If you think about those cafes I was talking about in the employment category, maybe there was something really special about the cafes and how they were being used, but it wasn't spelled out, so they didn't make the cut. I wonder whether it would be helpful to ask a colleague who doesn't know much about this area of work, so they've not been involved with the project, the initiative, get them to read through your entry and see if they fully understand what you've done and why it's impressive. And that's all gets covered in criterion 1. This is where the bulk of the points in the scoring system sit. So capture our attention from the start. Make sure we know what it is you've done, why you've done it, and what makes that so special. Just a little warning there. You try and avoid the marketing superlatives. We're not looking for advertorial. There's a place for that in other comms that you might do, but not for the award. It needs to be substantiated and succinct. And perhaps a little sort of caveat: if you are really struggling to articulate what's different about your approach, that could be a signal actually that perhaps it's not that innovative. That's of course not to say it's not excellent and not really worthwhile, but it may not be awards material. So the third one is alignment with the criteria. The way that the form works, when you make your submission, you are asked to answer 4 questions. Each of those 4 relates to one criterion. Take note of that weighting. So innovation, which is always criterion 1, whichever category you're applying for, is the biggest hitter, followed by criterion 4, which is always about impact and the evidence of impact. And that's the second highest scoring criterion. Obviously, you still need to answer the other 2 as fully as possible, but be aware that those 2 carry more points. And read back over what you've written. Score yourself against those criteria. Sometimes I think that there's waffle that could be taken out and additional information that could be put in. So really make that word count work for you. And the last one I mentioned was that tangible evidence of impact. It's really critical to a strong application. Clear and measurable evidence that the project has made a difference. The so what of it all and how you know that to be the case. I think the shortlisters are slightly more forgiving in this area, but Emma, you've supported the judges panel. They'll have none of it. If the evidence isn't there, I know they've said sort of, well, it all sounds great, but how do we know that it's really made a difference? And I think it is an area in which some really promising submissions actually falter. They sounded really exciting as you're reading through and you're thinking, wow, this is great. And then you get to criterion 4 and there's very little evidence of positive impact. sometimes there are some assertions, learners are so much more confident now, or learners are much better prepared for work now than they were. But how do you know that? How are the judges going to be assured that that is actually the case? So I think they're the four things to keep in mind at all times: specificity, clarity, purpose, alignment with the criteria, and strong evidence.
Excellent. That's really, really great advice. And just to say that everything is clearly spelt out on the website, the awards website, so you can read that and revisit all of these things as well as watching this webinar. So do have a look at the website in detail. But yeah, continuing on the theme of evidence, as you said, it's vital to a successful application, and that's often a place where applications might fall down. So perhaps we could dig a little deeper into that and talk about what kind of evidence are shortlisters and judges really looking for? What's going to make them really consider an application as one worthy for selection?
But to be clear from the outset, there's no kind of one form of evidence that anybody's looking for, judges or shortlisters, and we're just as interested in qualitative as quantitative evidence. What we need to see is some proof that the practice that's been submitted has resulted in positive benefits for learners. You, as the submitter, the college, you'll know that's the case, but what can you produce so that others who are external to it can be assured that it's a substantiated claim? It is one of the main differentiators, as I've just said, really, between successful and unsuccessful applications, and judges are definitely all over criterion 4. Some things I think to bear in mind, a few sort of top tips around that evidence criterion. You may have projects that are ongoing that you are really excited about, but maybe they haven't yet delivered measurable, observable benefits. And my advice there will be wait until next year and submit it then with that evidence gathered. We're not planning to change any categories in the near future, so if you hold on to something for another year, the chance will still be there. Make sure that you're not just asserting impact. So share the information that you have that enables you to make that assertion. And one way of doing that is to establish a baseline to measure your improvements against. Sometimes you can go back and do that retrospectively because, for example, you may be looking at how many more learners this year have progressed to paid employment than last year, and you'll have that data. But in other cases, you may need to think about, as you start your project, what's the picture now? What can we gather that will allow us to measure noticeable change from this starting point? Provide some kind of sense of scale of the impact. So potentially, how many learners were involved? What's that as a percentage of the cohort or the target group or so on? Think about the additional evidence that you can put forward. So you can put forward a small amount of extra evidence alongside the application form, short videos, quotes from learners. Just think creatively about what types of information give that evidence, and multiple sources. Think about who has been impacted or involved. So it, as well as learners, it could be staff, families, external partners, employers, so on. If you find that you haven't really got a baseline to measure against, then I would again suggest perhaps this isn't one to put forward. It may be that it's done a great job, but it's not sufficiently evidence to make it stand out in the Innovation Awards. And gosh, I sound a bit patronizing, but learn that lesson about collecting the baseline data for the next project of this nature that you do. Definitely the stronger and more tangible the evidence, the more chance you have of making it through the shortlisting process and and the more chance you have of being the award winner.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really helpful, I'm sure. So we've talked about quite a lot of top tips and things to do, but maybe there's, one or two examples of common mistakes that you might see in less successful applications.
Yeah, in some ways, I guess we've covered them already. They're the flip side of what I'm saying is really good practice to do. So the applications that don't get through the shortlisting process are those that don't really include practice that's innovative enough. So it might be really strong but not innovative. It's been interesting, having been involved in the awards from the start, that we've seen a real strengthening of the quality of the practice being put forward. I have to admit, in the first year, some practice that was submitted for the awards maybe wasn't that strong. We don't see that anymore. The practice that comes through is always really strong. But people forget that the Natspec Innovation Awards are just that, innovation. They're not that star best in class that I like to use. And that the scoring system is heavily weighted towards innovation. So great practice on its own, it isn't going to necessarily be award winning. We've touched on this quite heavily, I think, not including clear enough, strong enough evidence. And often that is because the projects are too new really to show results. So as I said, hold on to it, submit next year. Submissions that don't pay sufficient attention to the category criteria. So don't just tell us everything about how marvellous the project is, but really think about, if there are 6 points assigned to this criterion, what can I put into this section that will really help us gain those points. And finally, I feel quite sorry for people who put in these kind of submissions. They're those that are great and they're innovative, but they don't really fit into any of our categories. So there isn't an award for what they're doing at the moment. And I would say, don't shoehorn them in, because the judges have to work against the criteria that are there and the categories that we have. There's lots of other ways that Natspec can celebrate and help showcase your work. Get in touch with us. Maybe you could be delivering a webinar, taking part in a peer exchange event where you showcase your work. You could be writing an article for Quality Times. And actually, you could be lobbying us for a new category for next year. Hold on to it. That's how the curriculum category got added. We didn't have one in the first year. I think it came in either second or third year, because we could see people were desperate to share their innovative curriculum projects, but we didn't have a means of recognising them. So don't sort of waste what we know time's very valuable to you. Don't waste it putting forward a submission for this year through the awards. Contact us and we'll find another way to get that out there.
Brilliant, that's great. Thank you, Ruth. Just a couple of final questions before we wrap up. Just thinking about the Kathryn Rudd Award. For the last 2 years, we've had this as an extra award to celebrate Kathryn Rudd. You can find out more about that on the website. And this goes to the most innovative of the individual category winners. Just quickly, have you got any tips on how you go about winning that one?
I wish I did in many ways. That this is chosen by the judge, the chair of the judging panel, and he's looking across all of the different categories and selecting the one where innovation really is at its highest level. So I guess to be in with a chance of winning the Kathryn Rudd Award, you've got to absolutely max out on your criterion 1 score, which is all about innovation. You've got to be really confident that your practice is substantially different from what you might expect to see in a specialist college. And you've got to be able to articulate that difference clearly and concisely. So there's absolutely no chance of the judges missing the fact that it's something new, exciting, and critically impactful. Going back to evidence there. So you put something forward that is truly innovative, and wow, is it making a real difference for the young people in your setting?
Thank you, thank you. And just before we wrap up, do you have any final tips, things you might not have mentioned before on the practical side for applicants, things that they might just, nuggets that you might be able to share?
Yes, start early. Don't leave it till the last minute. Draft your application in Word first and review it really carefully against the criteria. Don't forget the different weightings for the different criteria. And a plea from my colleague Amanda, who runs the whole sort of behind the scenes part with the website. She asks that make sure that your evidence files are within the word and size limits for video. Otherwise, we may not be able to consider them. And finally, this is a Natspec award for Natspec members. We want to keep it as a friendly, helpful, supportive experience. So if there's anything that you're unsure about, get in touch. We're here to help. We want you to make the very best application you can. And we want to be able to showcase all the great stuff that's going on in the colleges. So draw on us as a resource. We're more than happy to help.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, Ruth. I'm sure all of your valuable insights will really help the colleges submit the most strongest and possible applications that they can put in. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk about all of that for us.
No problem at all. It's been interesting to reflect, and I absolutely really looking forward to seeing all the inspiring entries that come through for the 2026 awards.
Yeah, and just finally to all applicants, just remember, be bold, be clear, and most importantly, back it up with evidence and look for that innovation wherever you can. Wheedle it out in your college, because I'm sure there's lots there to talk about. But if in doubt, ask us for guidance. And most of all, good luck, and we hope to see you on the winners list. And just to finish, to inspire you, we're going to just show a video of all the winners from last year's awards, hopefully give you some inspiration.
It was wonderful for us to hear other examples, some really amazing examples of innovative working across the sector. Our students were absolutely delighted. They were very proud of the trophy. It's got pride of place.
Digital Independent Specialist College won the Innovative Routes into Employment Award for their professional digital agency, giving students industry experience.
We combine a specialist college with a professional digital agency to give young people with SEND real-world skills and experience. We think our project's innovative because we mirror the freelance, remote and diverse nature of the digital economy. We try and create genuine pathways into work that suit the talents and strengths of our interns.
This college teaches you how to gain independence and teaches you how to work at the digital-based industry.
For young people, they're growing in confidence and they're securing paid work and meaningful paid work faster than ever.
Tradsgrove Educational Trust Specialist College won the Innovative Approach to Mental Health and Wellbeing Award for improving wellbeing and outcomes using a blend of sound and hydrotherapy.
Felt that it was really important to apply for the award because our students literally chose to do this and had asked to do more sound therapy from having music therapy sessions for a number of years.
So the student you can see behind me, she's had several positive outcomes since we've introduced liquid listening. She really struggles to regulate her emotions and be quiet. And as you can see, she's really relaxed, calm, and she gets fully immersed in the music.
Pettypool Vocational College won the Innovative Approach to Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Award for their Neurodiversity at Work conference, which is shaping employer attitudes.
We launched the Neurodiversity in Work conference to challenge stereotypes and promote inclusive employment for neurodiverse individuals. The initiative has empowered employers with knowledge, skills and behaviours, raised awareness of the benefits of having a diverse workforce, and strengthened community partnerships, contributing to a more inclusive and equitable workforce.
What made our project innovative is that we realised that there was a gap in terms of employer knowledge and understanding around inclusion, and what we really wanted to do was support employers around what they believe to be the scary world of inclusivity.
Hondover College won the Innovative Interdisciplinary Working Award for their fun and engaging integrated therapy approach to supporting learners' needs.
Integrated therapy combines physiotherapy, speech and language therapy with sensory activities, quite often a sensory story, to make physiotherapy really interesting and engaging for our learners.
So I worked in the NHS with occupational therapists, but physiotherapy and speech and language therapy don't commonly work together. So it's really innovative in that respect, but also the design of the classes. We generate a bespoke sensory story designed for the individuals in mind. And that way it makes it really fun and engaging, and we get much better outcomes for our learners.
The Deaf Academy won the Innovation in Student Voice Award for increasing deaf awareness and securing traffic calming measures outside their college.
The project that we did was our students were campaigning for numerous amount of years to have a pebble crossing for safety on the really busy road just outside the academy. The students had to raise over £30,000 and working with various community groups, the local newspapers and press. They achieved this goal.
The student can be more independent, they know what they have to do, so that maybe they're more confident, which means they don't need to go with staff, or so they can learn how to walk across.
National Star College won the Innovative Specialist Mainstream Partnership Working Award for a dynamic partnership to create new specialist provision at a GFE college.
Our project was a collaboration between 3 organisations, Worcestershire Children's First, National Star and the Heart of Worcestershire College, to deliver specialist provision for young people with SEND in the heart of Worcester.
Just starting at the assessment down at Hereford, within 40 minutes, to have someone come back in the room and they clearly get it.
They've seen Ellie Forelli.
They've seen Ellie Forelli.
This is actually giving these children, these young people, the opportunity to further their education, which is what we need to do, that we need to be teaching them life skills.
Law College won the Curriculum Innovation Award for their successful student-led business to assess accessibility in other organisations.
Let Me In is a student-run business, and we go out to businesses and places in the community to assess how accessible they are.
Let Me In is an innovative project that is run by the students within the community.
Thinking of applying next year? Here's why you should.
And it was a real moment for students and staff to celebrate together. It's a lovely talking point for our students as they show parents, prospective students around the college. They enjoy showing off the trophy and just being able to celebrate that together.